And we're live, people. Deluded. I'm back again. I was just telling Sammy off screen. I have a pleasure of making his acquaintance. I'm really proud of him to be here doing this with myself. How you doing, Sammy? Man, we got an interesting story to delve into.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm very, very well. Thank you, Dog, for asking. How you doing? Everything good your end?
I'm good, man. I'm great. As I said, man, I'm a big fan of you. I'm a big fan of your book. I'm a big fan of what you've done. And I'm a big fan of talking about interesting stories and innovative individuals like yourself, man. So, yeah, man, big up for doing this with myself, Sammy, man.
No, I appreciate it, mate. I value every opportunity to connect with another football person. So I'll take just as much from it.
I appreciate that. Before we get into it, what team do you support? I need to know if I hate you.
Yeah, nice, mate. This will probably make you hate me, but it's a really shallow answer. So I grew up supporting Portsmouth. That was the team because it was just family and that sort of thing. But because I've worked in football, I've sort of supported whoever I've worked for. So I worked for Weymouth for a period of time. Like, I always look out for them. I worked for Wimbledon for a period of time. Always look out for them.
They got promoted, big them up.
Hamburg went to Hamburg and now look out for them. Do you know what I mean? So there's just teams throughout the journey, my own journey, that I've like fallen in love with, and it's just like they're who I'm going to follow now. Do you know what I mean? So I've got a bit of a selection. So I don't know how it's a bit of a cop out, but it's also a safe answer.
No, I wouldn't say it's a cop out because I get it. Naturally, you've got an affiliation. You've worked for these clubs. You've breathed with these clubs. Naturally, your heart's going to be drawn to them, man. No, man, I thought you was going to say Spurs or Chelsea or something. You're all right, man. But you've lightly touched on it. And even when you said Hamburg, yeah, I'm jumping ahead a bit, but you've done quite a lot being in different environments and stuff like that. I want to strip it all the way back to the beginning. Like, what's your earliest football memories? And then take me to the point what kind of led to you maybe playing football, first getting into any sort of coaching.
Yeah, man. So first footballing memory would be just out on the street. We sort of lived in a cul-de-sac sort of council area, and it was just
like, for goals.
Just like bouncing off the curb, and it'd be coming back at you in all sorts of ways, and you'd be sort of like shimmying to try and make it land with like ball that's like still made of leather and that sort of thing. But it was like best period ever. You just have like 5 or 6 mates. You should be doing like 3v3s and little headers and voles, and ledge time. So that's the earliest football in memory. But coaching was, so I actually I lost my eyesight in my right eye.
Oh, wow.
When I was about like 12, 13. So that made playing really difficult. I did play after that, but there were so many surgeries, so many complications. Like, I played a charity game for AFC Bournemouth, and I was playing left wing back, which is not my natural position anyways. So I'm out on the left wing back, playing with AFC Bournemouth legends. So it's all my heroes sort of in and around me. And obviously I can't see anything out of my right eye. So like, I'm just going down the line every time because I can't invert, because I can't see anything. And it was the first time it was like, wow, like playing's going to be pretty difficult. This is going to be a tough career. Like, being a pro footballer is already a 0.001% chance. To split your vision in half probably adds a few more zeros to that. So
yeah, man.
Right, like, what's the next best thing? Scouting, analysts, coaching, and that's when that sort of jumped into my my remit, I suppose. I suddenly become aware of other careers in football, and so then went to Bournemouth, and that's where my journey started. Sort of in the academy there, doing all sorts of roles and experiencing as much as I could expose myself to.
I mean, you touched on it, and I actually didn't know that. But do you feel, that obviously you didn't want to lose your eyesight and whatnot, but you're still doing great things? Do you feel that's actually, it's going to sound like a mad question, but do you feel like it's actually been a benefit? Because obviously you're looking at things differently, especially if you're talking scouting and subs and things of that ilk. Has that positively affected your perception of how you see football?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's definitely made me pivot in the sense of how I have to achieve my goal, because like, it was always win the Premier League as a footballer. Now it's going to have to pivot, and now I'm going to have to win it as a coach, as an analyst, as a something else.
You got this.
So so it's made me look at a different side of football. And most recently, I've just sort of done a little bit in the business side of football, which again has been a whole nother experience for me, looking at like how commercially football businesses are run. And again, that's the whole nother pivot. So in a way, it taught me a lot of resilience as well, which is a major benefit.
Facts.
So you could say, in a weird sort of way, it has benefited me. And, you've just got to play the picture, haven't you?
I mean, that's what, and this is why I wanted to tell your story, because you haven't let any adversity affect you. Like, not to diss anyone, but many people would see that as a reason to give up. It's almost like it's giving you even more fire in your belly. So on behalf of my viewers, I'm proud of you, man. Obviously, then, the football dreams kind of stopped from that sense. You touched on Bournemouth. What was your first club? Was it Weymouth or?
Yeah, so technically it would have been Brentford. Did like 6 months as a talent scout, sort of internship. It was just as their academy closed, so it was like a really weird time. There wasn't a lot going on. They just closed. I was at uni at the time, so I then came back home to Bournemouth, and that's when I got into officially like the academy. I was coaching, I was scouting, I was doing analysis work. I was literally doing a little bit of everything, and it was almost me learning what I wanted to do in football because there's a lot of overlap between all of those departments. But they also so different in their own sort of respect. So it was that was my first sort of journey where I was doing a little bit of coaching, a little bit of out on the weekends looking at players, a little bit of analysis of training games, opposition analysis, and really, really valuable. I'd encourage everyone to go and sort of experience some or as much as they can before they decide what they want to focus on really. And I sort of went to Weymouth as quite a young first team coach. I was sort of 19, 20, 21. And that came through my time at Bournemouth, sort of meeting various people, connections and network and that sort of thing. So, really, really beneficial time in my personal journey.
I mean, it sounds it, man. You've lived quite the life, man. You've like you said, and I think that's a crucial bit of information in that everyone should be exposed to everything. Like I'm sure if you were to art scouts or coaches, there might be, they might like analysis, they might like opposition analysis, they might like talent ID, but there's probably one singular kind of facet that kind of gets their heart kind of going. So you mentioned you're at Weymouth. What's the next step after that?
So Weymouth was an insane experience. It was non-league, so we was in Southern Prem, which I think is
trenches.
Yeah, it is proper trenches, and again, that all plays a part in your journey. I think it's all the makeup of you, and so it was step 3. We had back-to-back promotions, so we got to the National League. So we were against Wrexham's, Stockport's, Notts Counties, like huge clubs,
serious teams.
Yeah, serious teams at that level. It's effectively a 5th professional league now. I don't care what people say. Having been in it for a couple of years, I think us and I think it was Wealdstone at the time were the only real part-time teams. Everyone else is full-time there. And you go to Barnet, and they've got sort of like 11 grass pitches. We're training on a Thursday evening on half a pitch, sharing it with Blandford, who are just a local Dorset side, with plumbers in our team, electricians in our teams, teachers in our team. That was the sort of level we were at. And it was I really resonated with it because it was a case of they've got everything going for them.
You're fighting against the grain.
We need to show some character. Yeah, we're up against it from minute one. So you got to have character, and I love that side of football. And non-league is sick. And I went through COVID with Weymouth, and this is where the whole substitute journey started. So we furloughed a few players. Few of them players got sort of hit by COVID. So we had sort of a bare 11. We're playing Maidenhead in the FA Cup. We got bare 11. I come into the stadium and I walk into the changing rooms and there's a shirt where I usually sort of, get ready. And it says Lander and it says Lander 13. And I'm thinking, all right, here we go. Go in and I'm thinking, so is this like a joke? Do you know what I mean? Is it a leaving present? Have I been out here still? Do you know what I mean? Walk in, he's like, look,
I'm pulling my leg.
Is it? I'm thinking someone's, April Fool. And I walk in, he's like, yeah, you're on the bench today. And I'm thinking, all right then, I've done a bit in training. Do you know what I mean? I'm not the worst in the world. I could probably make it work. I'm going to run hard. I've got a pair of legs on me. I've got brain. So I'll just try and think my way through it. So I'm on the bench and, 84th minute, striker goes down. Gaffer turns to me and he's like, Sammy, you're going to have to come on here. You're going to come on. And I'm like, Jesus, I'm in a bench coat. I've got jelly babies. I'm tuned into the game because I'm a coach still and I'm coaching the tactical shape. So I'm still invested. But my body is nowhere near ready. I haven't touched the ball for an hour. There are so many factors that are going. I might have to go on and be the difference in a minute. And fortunately or unfortunately, the striker jumped back up and saw the game out. And I didn't get my minutes for this marquee signing deserves.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I know that would have been. I could have had a whole other journey if I'd have come on and banged the winner in or something.
That's where I thought the story was going. I thought you were going to come on and score the winner, man.
Instead, it took me down a different pathway where on the drive home, I was like, wow, that's what being a substitute feels like. That's the worst thing in the world. And not only is there all this expectation on you, but there is no preparation for you. And it's just a real disparity in what we need from subs, but what we actually give subs it is a huge disparity. And that was sort of the start of me becoming football's first substitutions coach, because it just snowballed from there. And I started looking into it from a psych point of view. You know, you're being dropped. How do you deal with it? You deal from it from the technical, the tactical, the physical, the psychosocial. Like, there's just so much to it. And all these experiences that I had in the academy of doing a bit of analysis, doing a bit of coaching, recruitment, you know, being at Weymouth where you don't have the privilege of a backroom team, you have to do 4 or 5
You have
roles.
to do it all yourself, essentially.
Yeah, it really fed into me creating sort of a holistic role, because now I could work with players on the pitch, off the pitch, in the analysis room, one-to-one when we're talking about, you know, maybe some of the slightly deeper stuff around their feelings, and just really prepared me. And I think I look back at it now and it was like, I'm so glad I just threw myself into it, because it almost prepared me for the substitute role, really.
I mean, that's a good way of looking at it, and that's interesting. I do want to ask though, because obviously everybody, whether it's me with content creation, whether it's you with your line of work, or everyone, like you said, there's that initial brain spark, there's that kind of eureka moment. Wow. But did you pursue it straight away, or was it like it's just purely curiosity at this stage, or did you just see it first time? He's like, you know what, plowing straight into this, finding everything out about it.
Yeah, so I had this little book at home. It was sort of an ideas book as such, and I knew I wanted to achieve something in life. I knew I wanted to have a legacy. That was very important to me. Like, we didn't really come from loads as a family, so I wanted to try and like leave a footprint in the world. I think that's a real motivator for me, and probably still is. And so every time I would see something, I'd put it in this ideas book and thinking that might be the thing that like propels me to the best, you know, and I get to go against the best. And that sort of went in this ideas book. It was like a subs role, you know, and it was just went in there, and then every so often you get it out and you scribble in it, and I think, oh yeah, you know, I might be able to do that differently, and you scribble in it, and it snowballed from there. And in the summer, I went through the whole data side of things, because that's how you have to pitch to teams now. And I couldn't find any data. Every major platform had no substitution data. So all of a sudden, now I found a gap in the market. You know, now I can pitch myself. I'm now relevant, because now I can start creating these things, and I can go to teams and I can say, look, if you use me, I'm the only guy on the planet at the moment that seems to have these things. Like, every data provider doesn't. And now not only do I have this, but I've now designed a role that's going to allow me to influence this data. So now you're getting, you know, loads of different things. And yeah, it sort of just grew from there. And even now, you know, I went into my most recent club in Hamburg. You go in and you're doing it, and you're thinking, I could probably add that to it as well. You know what I mean? Or I might do this a bit different. Or I might have a player that comes to me and say, oh, I feel like this. And it's like, well, I've never heard that before. Like, that's enough. And it just keeps growing, really, and growing. And I think that's the exciting part, really, is that you don't know where it's going next. And it all seems to be positive.
No, man, that's great to hear. And I do feel, yeah, like today in football nowadays, where it's all about analysis and a lot of it is more data driven than anything, I do feel it's not easier to become a set piece coach or anything like that, but it's less foreign to if I had what you had and I went to, I don't know, Barnet, for example, and tried to pitch it, they might not give it to me, but it's not foreign. But probably when you started, everyone was like, hang about, like, what's all of that? We don't need a set piece coach. Like, what are you talking about? How was that, and how was dealing with that? Because it's almost like the way you're looking, the way you're doing it, Sammy, it's like me and you are using a laptop and we both got phones. I'm pretty sure the first person that brought out a phone, people were like, oh, we got letters and pigeons, we don't need that. So it's like, how was that?
Mate, that's where that word resilience comes in again. So there was some definite moments where, again, I was in a fairly good position. I had a few conversations, one with a League One manager who's still currently at a club now at League One. Called him up. I'm busy on LinkedIn, really busy on LinkedIn, because we come from a really rural part in the world. You know, nearest football club's an hour away. Don't particularly have a lot of network, got no surname that's going to generate me interest. You know, I'm an absolute nobody. So I had to use LinkedIn. That'd be another piece of advice. Just the best tool in the world, the best platform in the world for me. And I would just bail people as much as I could find their number online, and just get after them and just say, look, I've got
cold call, essentially.
an idea. Yeah, just got 5 minutes. Can I just pitch this idea to you? And some were really receptive, and I met some awesome people that I'm still in contact with today. Some weren't, and they're the cases that you're talking about, in the sense that he's like, you know, look, mate, don't think it's going to be a thing. Think it's a bit silly. Don't really get what it's going to do. Don't think there's a place for this. You know what I mean? And all those things. And, you know, the football is a game of opinions. Like, just as I maybe don't agree with the formation, but some managers love that formation. You know, I never took it personally, because it wasn't personal to me. They weren't saying you're wrong. They're saying they think that the idea is wrong. And you have to
their reality might be wrong as well.
That's it. It's not going to be for everyone. You know, I might go into their club and it might not work. So I'd rather them be honest with me than say, yeah, love it, come in. it absolutely crash and burn, and I've just wasted 4 months of like effort and time and work. So I appreciate your honesty. I think it's a good thing to have in a person. So there were definitely those moments, and even today I count rejections, because when I was younger I was told.
So do I.
Oh, is it? That's cool, mate.
Yeah,
That's the
man.
first time I've ever said that, and someone's gone, "Yeah, me too."
No, same, man, because it
Yeah.
motivates me more. I see the knockbacks, like, yeah, man.
So I was told, I think it was 1,000 rejections until you're going to be successful. That was sort of like the saying I was taught when I was younger, and started counting them, thinking like, get to 1,000, like I'm going to be guaranteed success.
I'm at 999 on close now.
Yeah, it's coming on the next one. So I think I'm at like 243 now, or something like that. Like I'm in and around the 200s, and so there's a fair share of rejections there. But in the same breath, I've done some sick stuff in this with my life that I look back and feel so proud of and honoured to have done. So, it was worth every single rejection that I ever got. That's the best way to phrase it.
I mean, and again, one thing I like about you is most people get complacent. You seem like you're just getting started. You're still hungry like you first started. So like, what role would it have been? Yeah, because obviously we've gone through Weymouth now, and we've gone through a couple of clubs. What kind of role was it where you was like, you know what, this is me now, set piece coach, this is me, it's all working, I'm the guy kind of thing?
Yeah, so Wimbledon, just so much credit for them. So I went into pitched, I called the set piece coach. Set piece coach liked it. He exchanged numbers with the manager. I managed to get into Wimbledon in the summer of 2021, I think it was. We were sort of fresh out of COVID. Managed to come in for the day, invite me in. I watched training. It was sick. Ate lunch with the players and the staff. Like, first experience really, I think it was about 23 at the time, 24, of like a professional environment. It was
properly ingrained.
Yeah, I'd only been exposed to part-time football and academy football, and this was like the real deal. This was like training ground, training pitches, everything, balls pumped up. When you get to the training ground, it wasn't, me or the kit man doing it. It was like the real thing, and it was sick to be a part of that. And so went in, pitched the presentation, said, look, this is how I've seen it. I've got the data. I think I can influence this. I've noticed these are your players. I think I can work with them. This is what I'm going to do. And it was an internship. So it was, it didn't cost them a penny. So really from their side of things, you're thinking you ain't really going to lose out on a lot.
There's a lot of upside.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of return on investment because you haven't put anything out there. So even if I return one goal, we're in the green and we're positive. So Mark Robinson was the manager at the time. He loved it. Sent me to the CEO and the sort of head of some of the more senior roles, pitched it to them slightly differently because they were different people, a little bit more on the business side of things. They loved it. And yeah, I got appointed as substitutions coach at AFC Wimbledon in League One. And that was like the moment. It was like, wow, now I've got a platform to show everybody what I was going to tell them that I wanted to do. And I think that was quite exciting.
No, that was good. But that sounds good, man. It's like all the hard work, all the hardship, it finally counts. And, that's what life's about, isn't it? Like, you got to find reasons to suffer. And that's why I believe in life, you have to have a goal and you've genuinely got to love it. Like, clearly, in an ideal world where we didn't have to pay bills and all of those things, you genuinely would be doing stuff like this and just doing it out of the kindness of your heart and how much you love it kind of thing. So how long was you at Wimbledon for?
So I was at Wimbledon for the year, like really, really good experience. Went and played Arsenal in the Carabao Cup. So got to meet Mikel Arteta, got to meet sort of Emile Smith-Rowe, Partey. I don't think Saka played that. We met some like awesome people, and they like couldn't have been nicer as a club. Like really hospitable. Everyone gave me their time, like me and the other staff, and we just managed to. I managed to sit and pick the brains of a couple of really cool people. So brilliant experience. Whole year at Wimbledon was good. We were second, I think, in subs. Goal contributions, most points won from losing position. We started generating a little bit of value actually from what we were doing. Gained some unbelievable evidence, what I would call evidence, in the sense that when I left Wimbledon, it allowed me to use this to go and pitch to other clubs. So there's this one moment, I talk about it in the book, where we was at Morecambe and we were losing, I think, at half time, and we'd noticed that the fullback and the centre back had really detached. So when they're sort of in their back four, huge amount of space to explore.
There's a lot of space in the
Loads of space, yeah. So we noticed that our winger could have out-to-in runs. So at half-time, as one of the strategies that we do, we hold training sessions at half-time. We effectively get the subs out. We put a 15-minute training session on for them based on what we've seen in the first half. So rather than having a team talk and talking them through what we want to see, we're setting it up and we're going, look, this is what we're going to do. So we played through this pattern of play, and it was an out to in run. And we just rehearsed it. A little bit ball to feet, ball in front, ball in behind, step over down the line, step over in the line. Just rehearsed it as much as we could in this player's muscle memory. About 25 minutes later, we filmed it as well. 25 minutes later, a player comes on, performs the exact moment in the exact part of the pitch, the exact skill that we practiced, leads to a shot on target, score from the corner. And it's like, that's why we do it. That moment, just that isolated moment is worth everything that I've done in the build up to this moment of like,
and you get the buzz from it as well.
You get a real buzz from it. You're like, even the shot on target, you're like, I'm just celebrating a little bit because you're thinking like, we just created that. Like, that's what we've rehearsed and it's worked. And Wimbledon was just so good for that. Like, I just got so many pieces of evidence, whether it be players saying, how they feel about now their new approach to being a substitute, a little bit about the data, those clips, just all this allowed me to formulate a bit of a profile to say, look, I'm not insane. There is something here. Might need to be fine-tuned a little bit, but
there's a bit of gold here.
Yeah, exactly that. So yeah, I was at Wimbledon for the year and then left at the end just because they had a change of management team and there was a little bit of a reshuffle and they got rid of all specialist coaches, me, the set piece, the mindset. So it was, I went on to sort of new ventures then.
Where did you go after Wimbledon?
So it was an insane summer. I literally traveled the country presenting to every team I could get in front of. A lot of people sort of tracking it from afar, so invited me in. And the most logical thing at that time was to turn it into sort of a consultancy, because I think a few teams, particularly when it comes to budget, maybe don't have the budget to say, look, here's X amount of money just for a specialist subs coach. So instead, I would sort of turn it into consultancy where I would work with a number of teams. And that led to some insane collaborations in the US, working for Loudon. I worked for Al Nassr in Saudi.
Wow.
Linked with a couple of teams in Portugal.
You want to get out there now, man?
I know, I mean.
Exactly. And you got Ronaldo, man.
Over there. So yeah, and it just led to some like insane collaborations in like leagues that I probably would have dreamt of working in. But also what was so valuable is that you're seeing different cultures, of
exactly.
how a French team approach being a substitute as opposed to how a Spanish team do, as opposed to how a German team do, as a US team. And like everyone's got their own little trends and patterns, in line with the league and the league's fixtures, and just led to like so much insight, which has now again made the concept stronger because now I'm pulling in loads of different leagues of data and, it was a really, really valuable experience. And again, another step for me, working in different cultures, going out, flying out to some of these countries and seeing different coaches now they work, which is insane. And yeah,
picking up little tips as well.
Massively. Because again, like I said, I want to be a coach. That's what I want to probably go back to at some point during my journey. So going and watching all these coaches, like you just said, I'm just taking little bits for my own personality and thinking, I like that. Like when I'm in that position, I'm going to do that. And little things like that. It's just a little bit like stealing ideas, isn't it? They say,
like Pep says, I'm an idea thief.
Coaches are the best thieves. That's the one.
I mean, that is good, man. I got to ask you then, like, maybe either directly, maybe working with a manager or a coach, or maybe just looking from afar, what coach or coaches or anything has had the most kind of impact on you in that regards then?
It's a really good question because I think there's been coaches in my journey that have showed me different things. So I've seen like different parts of different coaches have their own strengths. So I'm almost taking little bits. So there's a coach in Hamburg called Basil, and he is like the most intelligent coach I've ever seen. Like he is so well spoken, so well understanding of every topic that you need to know as a coach. He's just so well educated, and it shows in his work, when he's on the grass and stuff. And his ability to understand a topic was just like like when I sat down at dinner with him, just the best I've ever seen. Go to somewhere when I went to Lyon and I had dinner with a coach there, his ability to build a rapport with someone in like 20 minutes is insane. You know what I mean? Like he sat down with, we sat down to have dinner, and 20 minutes in, I found myself chatting about, my childhood, and I'm thinking like, wow,
life and that, yeah.
You've done that. Yeah. Like you spun it, and he's like connected with me and like, that rapport. And there are so many, like Mark Robinson at Wimbledon, just the most open-minded coach, like really receptive to everybody's got an opinion. Come and say it to me. I don't care if it's negative, if you're going to slate me, just say it because it's going to make me better. And I think that's so powerful to have as a manager. And there are so many coaches that I've sort of been honored to yes, speak to, and Russell Martin was another one who I went in and presented him.
Serious manager.
Yeah, and he's just like one of the greatest people I've ever come across. Just really kind. Do you know what I mean? Like, just had no reason to be kind to me, but was. And would give me the time of day. It was really inquisitive, would really push me at the right moments. And again, it's just loads. I could name loads of examples, but just everyone I've taken a little something from to hopefully formulate into this sort of
and craft your own thing.
Yeah, exactly that, man.
I mean, you've touched on it because you've spoken on like directly or indirectly being with different cultures and different countries and things. Like, what country or league do you feel has the best attitudes towards subs?
That's an interesting one, to be fair. I think it's a great question, that, because I would say there's been clubs that I've thought, like they've got it. You know, they've caught it. Like, I mean, basketball is brilliant. I've been into a couple of basketball just to research, and they've absolutely nailed it. Like, they've got culture to a T of like we, not me. They've just understood the brief. So I took a lot from that. But one thing that I think, from a data point of view, and probably from a little bit of a psych point of view, I think international football is a really nice platform for substitutes, because I think you can be so selective as a manager with who you're bringing as a substitute. So I did a little bit for the US national team, and you think about their talent pool that they could pick players from. You're talking thousands, you know. Whereas when I work with a club, I might only have about 8 subs, and I've got to make those work. You know, I'm gonna have to make them become the right subs. You go into an international football, and you've got thousands of players to pick from. You can think,
Bob's your uncle, really.
Yeah, his natural data just means he's going to be good in this game. So we don't even have to really give him too much. You know, we can really simplify the process. So I think what I'm learning is that international football is probably, from a data point of view, the easiest way to pick substitutes to make them work for you, because you just have such
got so many,
such a privilege to pick players, which I think is an honor for them, obviously.
If I kind of like not bring it into the real world now, but obviously, you know, you can have all your ideas as a coach, as a set piece coach. The manager can have all these issues, but if I bring players in, whether it's a young player that's used to just being on the bench, you might know you're making the numbers up, or one that's kind of been promised making his debut, or a seasoned pro that, you know, might be on the way out, not really seeing eye to eye with a manager. How do you get them to buy into what you need them to do? Because you can have all the ideas, and as you've said with the previous examples, they could actually work, but ultimately the players are the ones playing in it. Like, you ain't got a PlayStation pad, you can't make them do it. So how do you make it work? Because they've got to implement it.
Yeah, no, you bang on, and like I said, that what I enjoy about the role, I suppose, is that every person I meet has got their own personality, and I love that. I love people. I love sitting opposite someone, and they've got a journey, they've got a story, they've got a reason, they've got a rationale. You just have to understand it. And I think for younger players, it tends to be a bit more of, I think, an identity issue, because you're never taught to be a sub, you know, and
it's never nice, really.
It's the way it should be in academy football, is that you should be given minutes, because you're developing. We all love to play the game. It's a beautiful game. You don't want to be taking the ball out the kids' hands. But then all of a sudden, when you play to 18, like guaranteed minutes, and then it's like, now you're not going to play for 5 games, that's like an insane transition for someone to go through. Like, particularly with, I think, the modern day manager and player have become a little bit more educated around how to do it. And that's what I sort of go in and help. But back in the day, it used to just be like, you might get no dialogue as to why you've been dropped. It might be that you get a really tiny piece of dialogue that's quite negative, you know. So there's no real process that's really been implemented to say, oh, that's the best way to do it. So I have to go in, and I got one story that jumps to mind, and his only identity was being a footballer. He didn't know how to be anything else in football, because that's all he had. Like, that's who he was.
That's all he knew.
Yeah, and I know loads of people that can resonate with that. Even as a coach, you think, like, when I go to like parties and you meet people and you say you're a football coach, like, I don't talk about me. I talk about like my role. Do you know what I mean?
Profession, yeah.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, like 20 minutes in, I feel like I'm talking about work, and it's like I've not even said that, like, this is who I am as outside of football. And I think it can be quite easy to get caught up in football and think that that's who you are.
Facts.
And we sat down and we created like different identities for this player in football and outside of football. And then we just helped him realize that he was more than just a player, And one of his identities that we created was, in this case, an energizer in football. That was his, way of connecting with the game. And then we got this name, and then we designed a little bit of a way of being an energizer and how he could carry that role out and how it looked to him and how he understood it, how he could add value. And then before you know it, he can now chop between different identities. And having that ability, I think, is so important to understand what it is about being a substitute that is affecting them, and then going in with that solution mindset, with the right personality type to help them solve that. But even today, I meet people and I think like, wow, I've never even heard that reason before. That's sick. Like, let's solve it. So I think it's the beauty of people, isn't it? We're all different.
Has a manager, like, how do I make this make sense? Yeah, because in the same way, like you said, with the whole, you spent half time drilling the drills through, and then obviously it worked. Has a manager ever, and naturally it's going to happen, have you ever told them that it's going to work? They listen to you, it doesn't work, and then obviously ultimately it's not your fault because they listen to you, and it's obviously come from a good place, but they're bollocking you, or they're saying it's all your fault and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's part of football, isn't it? Like maybe not bollocking, maybe not quite to that extent. Maybe a few stern tracks to say, look, mate, like, I think maybe you got it wrong. You know what I mean? Or maybe this, but I will never tell the manager what to do. So everything that is relayed from me is almost a probability. It's like, look, we've looked at the data. The probability suggests this player is going to go and do this. But in the same mind, he's got a real big deselection hangover from being dropped yesterday. We've worked it. I can't guarantee that he's going to be, I can't, he's telling me he feels okay. I can't guarantee you that he's going to be in the best frame of mind at this moment. You're going to have to maybe clarify that with him. So there's lots of like moving parts, which is why I learned this as the journey goes on. You should never make a promise because, sometimes you can't keep that. There are external factors. You go out, there are 11 blokes or girls on the opposite team that are trying to stop you, and that's something you can't account for at times. So there are that was a learning process. And now it's just about how I frame it to the manager by saying, look, my opinion from the data is this. I've worked with Aaron. He seems to think that this is going to be good. This is what he thinks. Do you know what I mean? And it's almost like a sports scientist would just present the data and give their expert opinion. Analysts, when they do opposition work, present the clips and say their expert opinion. I'm almost developing sort of like an expert substitution opinion to go, look, this is where we're at. Ultimately, when you face the media at 5:30, it's going to be you that has to do it. So you need to be sure of it. You know what I mean? And that's again my job, to build rapport with the manager that allows me to have those relationships and those conversations.
I'm jumping ahead a bit, but I just don't want to forget while it's in my brain. Yeah. How have you seen like substitutions change where the Premier League is concerned? Because obviously we've gone from 3 subs to 5 subs. You mentioned Arsenal and obviously how nice Mikel Arteta was and all of those things. It draws me to Arsenal because there's a lot of criticisms and praise for Arteta's substitutions. But I look at sometimes the subs are an extension of the coaching staff. I look at someone like Jorginho, who's obviously, the dad of the group or was the dad of the group. And he's been known to relay instructions and run down the touchline when Arteta's giving him things to say. Or I look at Miles Lewis-Skelly, I think it was Man City away last year, where he got a yellow card ultimately because Mikel Arteta told him to relay a message. So like, what do you pick up from there? What have you seen from there in that regard?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I think it's developing all the time because again, prior to myself, no one's really specialized in this. Like you said, set pieces are going through that modernization now where it's like, oh, by the way, if we actually focus on this topic, might actually give us 5 more goals this season, which could be massive, And now subs, I feel like, again, hopefully what I'm doing, but also people around me and the book and whatever I can do is just bringing attention to the topic of subs. So there are so many facets to it, but I think from a data point of view, I think one thing I posted the other day is that teams that make 4 subs very, very rarely benefit from that. There's a couple of negative stats around it. So I think this is off the top of my head now, but like 60% of players lose their first duel as a substitute, and then 73% go on to lose the second duel as well. And we did some research around it when I was in America, and all of a sudden now, when you think like that, and then you think, well, the average pass completion of a substitute is 61%, which is like dramatically low. If you now bring 4 players on that will have 61 pass completion and potentially all lose their first duel, it's going to absolutely kill the game for you. Like, it's going to kill you.
Yeah, you might lose.
It's going to kill your control. Like, all it takes in football is one flick of like a momentum, and now the crowd are on you, and the pitch is on you, and
you might even lose your job.
And it's gone, yeah. And it's like all this sort of data, like it's trying to drive insights like that, and trying to drive best way to bring them into the game. You know, what times is it best to do a combo? Is it best to bring this player on with this player because of their playing profiles? Is it best to swap this player when he gets a bit tired or technically stops producing with this player because they have similar playing you know, we're just creating conversations, and that's just the data side of things. You know, there's sort of so much more to this, but it's just trying to drive those insights and those conversations. Where one of the biggest things I noticed when I first started this like 5-6 years ago was that we almost just hope when we sub, and it's almost just like, I'm going to bring the big man on, and I just hope that we pin one off his chest, and we benefit from it. And I think what I'm learning, in answer to your question, is we're moving into an era now where we can be deliberate with our subs. And I think if you're deliberate, you create consistency and you create effectiveness, and I think that's so important.
I mean, I must admit, yeah, like I might have to give Mikel Arteta an apology, because just based on what you're saying, when I'm sitting there watching Arsenal, I'm like, 85th minute, you're taking long to bring on subs. But based on what you said there about losing and percentages, I still somewhat agree with how I feel. But it's like, okay, you know what? Maybe, you know, ignorance in my part is bliss. It kind of makes sense in that regards. Who would you say then in the Premier League, or if they're not necessarily this season, but of recent, who would you say has probably been the best team where it comes to subs, or the teams where you thought, oh, you know what, you're getting it spot on, you're understanding it type of thing?
Yeah. So again, there's different ways you can look at it, because a substitute might have to do like 3 different roles in a 20-minute period because of just how the scoreline plays out. So in terms of when you're losing, AFC Bournemouth have an insane conversion rate of turning negative scorelines into more positive scorelines, particularly through the use of substitution goals or assists as well. They've got a brilliant system. So they're like a really energetic, high pressing team. They almost, I mean, it's no disrespect, but they have so many good physical profiles on their bench that as soon as one sort of winger starts getting tired, the next like exciting attacking physical winger is on, and their style of play almost never changes because they've got the next like for like replacement ready to go, and they've really, I think, felt the benefit of that. Where I think sometimes it maybe has come to their detriment is that maybe when their style isn't working, they maybe don't have an alternative plan on their bench
Plan B
to go, yeah, like this is a slightly different play. He's not physical, but he's a beautiful, like tricky 10. David Brooks has been good for them this year, I think, in that respect. But yeah, Andoni Areola has used it brilliantly, his subs this year. I think they might even be first in goal contribution.
What a manager.
Yeah, mate, he's insane. Like everything I've heard about him, just like as a person in the club, around the ground, on the training ground, just seems to be insane. So really excited to see how his career unfolds, really, because I enjoy his style of play as well. But when you look at it and flip it and then look at winning subs, you know, all of a sudden that's a completely different thing. So winning subs are now expected to come on and maintain score lines. So now you're not really asking them to come on and score goals and play exciting football. There are a couple of nice managers that are around that. Obviously, Pep, previous to this season, has been insane at that. I think they had something like a 90% success rate in when making a sub, maintaining a lead across like a 3-year period, which is like, you know, insanely high stats. This year's obviously fluctuated a little bit, but that's reflective of their season. So there are different ways that you can, like, what you want from a substitute, as in how to analyze that. So yeah, there's been some really nice examples, and again, some really different examples of way of achieving that success.
No pressure, but I've seen Pep and Areola get their credit. You know, I have to ask, is there anything Arsenal related off the top of your head?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I should have done my research. But no, Mikel Arteta, from what I remember, last year had a very, very good losing rate sub. So we created this metrics called points per game per sub. So effectively, when a player comes on and the scoreline is 0-0, if the player comes on and you win the game 5-0, that player is worth 3 points because he's won his part of the game. So you really start dividing the subs into their own parts of the game to understand across a 50-game sample what sort of impact they're having on the scoreline. And Mikel Arteta had a really, really good losing one last season. I think this season he had a really good drawing one in terms of turning draws into more positive results. So, yeah, it's something I'll have to do a little bit more research on. But I think I would love to get in front of the man. I mean, I met him briefly.
Arsenal employed a guy, man.
But yeah, I would love to get in front of him. Like everything, I watched the documentary, obviously the Amazon Prime one, was it done on Amazon? Like,
yeah, All or Nothing.
Yeah, that's it. And he just seems like the way he works is just insane. I would love to just get in front of him and not only pick his brains, but just show him some of the work that I'm doing and get his thoughts on it. But not that he needs it as such, but yeah, I've noticed a couple of trends. Might have to have a little look after and send you a couple of bits.
Yeah, no, definitely, man, and definitely pitch yourself. And I've been at a couple of press conferences, and what you said there, I can somewhat confirm. Like Arteta above everything. I don't know how to make it make sense, but he's got this aura about him where you just want to listen. He can kind of silently command the room, man. So
Yeah.
I'm rooting for you in that regards. I do want to ask you a question, yeah, because I feel when I've been asking you questions or when I've been visualizing things, I've been kind of focused towards, like, for example, a striker coming off the bench and winning the game, or a winger, etc. How different is it for like defenders or when you're maintaining the game then?
Yeah, mate. So, I mean, not so different because the principles will be the same, but you just got to use them a bit differently. So we do a huge amount of opposition analysis to understand what the games are going to look like at certain points. So you touched on it there. Like when we're losing, the strikers, the wingers, maybe the great centre mids who can find, space in the final third, centre backs that can break a line. All of a sudden, now we're talking about defenders that are better at progressing the ball. We might talk about full backs that are better in the final third as an output. So respectfully, maybe a little bit more like Trent is a brilliant losing sub because he's so good in possession.
He's going to take risks.
A lot of that. Yeah, he'll take those risks. He'll find the spaces. He'll produce quality. So all of a sudden, we're looking and thinking, how can we affect in each third? But we might also look and think, well, if we're ahead, what are they going to do to try and get back in the game? Because all of a sudden they're going to bring on the extra strikers, the wingers, the fullbacks. So now what solutions do we have to try and nullify that? So do we have a defender that's brilliant at clearances because they're going to be lumping balls into the box? Do we have a fullback who's just insane at 1v1s because they're going to bring on fresh wingers, and we need to be ready to defend that? Or do we have a mold of an N'Golo Kante that we can bring on who's just going to, defend the middle of the pitch for us?
Have energy in the middle.
Exactly that. And all of a sudden now we're talking about different solutions in different game states. And you can even relate it to tactical styles. So it's like, if they go direct, this is our best second ball substitute because that's what the game's going to look like. If the game's
that's good.
really expansive, who's our most counter-attacking substitute? And now we're painting pictures and assigning profiles to all these solutions so that when it happens in the game, there's no real guesswork. We've done all the work. We're ready for it. I just go to the gaffer and we just say, look, this is probably what we think. We've prepared them for it as well because we've trained it on the Friday with the sub specifically. Could be quite a nice solution here. And then obviously that's up to he or she to make the multi-million-pound decision.
And then, either you're a hero or they criticize you. I want to ask you something taboo as well, in the sense of first half subs. Like anyone that's played football, that's seen as the most embarrassing thing. You don't see it too much, but do you have any stories or anything around that?
Yeah, so but every team I've worked for, we've never made a first half sub. I can understand why managers do, because you would give a player 20 minutes at the end of a game, and you would think nothing of it. So to give them 20 minutes at the start of a game, you're giving them the same amount of time. But like I said, there's this narrative in football that's the most ridiculed thing in the world. So you have to, and I understand the players like. Because the way the media is in England, it's on every back page, it's on every Instagram reel, it's on every.
They're zooming in on you as well as you take the walk of shame.
Yeah, they're waiting for you to do something. So I can absolutely resonate with a player that gets, it must be the worst thing in the world. I've never experienced it and I've never worked with it, but it must be challenging. So I can see both sides of it. We Not Me tells me if it's going to help us get a result, and then it helps us get promoted, and then we're playing in a higher league. Well, the player we bring off is only going to benefit from that if we're in a higher league. So maybe he needs to just let this one happen. So that's my we not me thinking. But my me not we is thinking, yeah, that's tough. Yeah. He's trained all week. He's only been in 20 minutes. So I can absolutely see both sides. The only time we've made a first half sub is when we've had a red card, and then he's being naturally reactive. And then the player is just as frustrated that he's coming off. But there's a little bit more understanding as to why he's coming off and why that's happening. So it's easier to navigate those situations. But yeah, it must be really, really challenging for players.
So then I also got to ask you, what about, okay, maybe not so much the first half, but like the sub who comes on and then comes off? Because I'm just thinking of Abue many years ago when Abue came on and then he came off. Like, is anything around that? How do you navigate that if that has been something?
I'd like to think, again, not quite happened, but if it had happened, I'd like to think that we're almost ready for it, like 6 months in advance, that we've built a good enough culture and a good enough understanding of the role of a substitute in this team that we're working with, that if it were to happen, and it would only happen sort of once, and it wouldn't be like a regular occasion, that player could have an understanding. I'm not saying that emotion wouldn't come in and they would be initially probably disappointed, a little bit angry, a little bit let down, a little bit embarrassed. But I'd like to think that given a day to cool off, he will have understood, or she will have understood, why we've done that. Because up until that point, we're building this methodology around substitute, and we're building a really we, not me, a really collective environment. So again, it's not happened, but I'd like to think that the work we've done before that has laid the groundwork for that to make that situation a bit easier.
Thinking of making situations easier, I'll go back to the example which I found so fascinating about you working with the subs on the pitch at halftime. Is there anything, like, let's just assume we're playing on Saturday and let's just put ourselves on a Monday, and obviously on the training ground, you know, everybody trains together, but then there's all sub teams. Is there any like specialist group of subs, like, you know, that you're training on Monday, you know, on Saturday that these guys are going to be on the bench? Do you specifically work all week with them, or is there anything around that, or is it not a thing?
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. You bang on. So like, I suppose the best way to look at it is review and preview. So when we review the match, I will sit down with the subs and we will go through their individual clips of them being a sub, because there are things where sometimes players come on and be too forceful because they feel like they have to make an impact because it's limited time. So we talk through the decision making of maybe their clips, what they were doing. I've been a little bit sneaky at times. We sometimes film their warm-ups down the touchline, and sometimes I mean, you'll know as a fan, they're just so poor at times, where like players drop to a knee, open the gate, talk to their mate who's on the opposition team, and then just wander back up. And it's like, that's if I'm calling on you in 5 minutes to reach your top speed, that you're not going to be ready. And I don't want to put you at risk either. I don't want you to physically go and hurt yourself because we're asking that of you. So, you know, sometimes we might film that and I'll bring it up and say, look, you know, I felt like this could maybe have been done a little bit better. And we'll talk through methods that we can do that with the cue cards and stuff like that. So we'll do that in the review period. When it starts hitting the preview, that's when we're doing a lot of our sort of opposition work, and the closer it gets to a match day, I would always complement what the manager wants to do. So if a manager tells the team Tuesday who the subs are, I'll complement that. If he tells them Friday afternoon, I'll complement that. Like it's up to them and it's up to me to sort of be reactive. But the closer we get to a game day, most teams I work with, we just bring the subs away for a tiny part. We try to keep them as involved as possible because we're trying to build collectiveness, and I think that's important. But it might be like 15, 20 minutes at the end, we just go through a couple of game scenarios that they might face. You know, this is what Lincoln look like when they're winning. This is what Lincoln look like when they're defending 2 banks of 4. You know, so now we're going to set that up. We're going to do a little drill. It's only going to be 5 minutes, but when you come on in about 24 hours time, the pictures that you're seeing, you're going to recognize. And we'll touch on it again.
Pattern recognition.
Exactly that. It's that muscle memory. It's education. It's just giving them all the tools they need to go and be a good sub. And then through the week as well, you're having touch points with players that maybe haven't played or got limited minutes or might have a feeling they're going to be dropped, like little touch points. So yeah, it's absolutely like I said, it's so holistic that you're really trying to maintain constant, I suppose, touch points with them around the journey of being a substitute.
I mean, I'm learning so much. I do want to also ask, in a day and age where I wouldn't say footballers are overloaded with information, I don't agree with that. I just think this is where the game is. There's a lot of specialization, you know, just based on the work you're doing. I find myself thinking of fine margins, you're essentially Mr. Fine Margins. But then I think about footballers, and I'm not calling no footballer stupid, but I think the ability to relay what you or the coach or whatever they're telling you to do from minute one, or if you come off the bench, how much does that play a part? Like, has there ever been incidences where, again, I'm not saying a player's stupid, but they might not just get it? Like, it might just be a snap decision you lot have worked on in those 15 minutes at halftime, or even 5 minutes while the second half's going on, and they're just not able to quite grasp it, because people do learn at different rates and things. Has that ever? How much of a factor is that, and has that ever happened?
Yeah, like you bang on. You have to recognize the learning style that's opposite you, because there'll be people like, I have to sit down. I have to show them clips. That's the only way that they're going to understand, you know, what the game's going to look like to them. But there are people that I need to get out on the grass and I need to physically run through it with them for them to understand it. There might be people who are just in a little bit of a different space, where when I'm in the bench and I'm hearing down from the stand, look, you know, this is happening, I can just relay that to them and they'll understand it just like that, you know, because they've seen it themselves, and loads of different learning styles. And I think you have to recognize that. And again, you're not going to get that right every time, because the first time I meet a player, I'm not going to know him inside
Need
out
to
or her
understand
inside
them.
out. Yeah, I'm going to have to get to know each other. He's probably going to have to learn a little bit about me, whether he can trust me, whether he can be a little bit vulnerable with me. You know, those things have to happen as well. So that's why I always say that my role, and particularly just the role of a sub, the longevity of it only makes it stronger because you're building relationships, you're building new patterns into a player's process, you're modernizing something that's going to last hopefully for years. So I think there probably have been instances, none that I can sort of think of to mind, but a couple of examples where we almost recognised we had to do something was when players come on, maybe like, let's say a right winger comes on, receives the ball, drops a shoulder, tucks inside from like 50 yards out, like swings his left foot thinking it's going to go stanchion and in, and it's going to be like the best thing, he's going to be the super sub, and it just flies like out for a throw in. And you just think like, you wouldn't have done that if you'd started the game. You're doing it for a reason.
You want to impress a bit too much.
Maybe it's a bit forceful. You're thinking a little bit like, oh, the gaffer's watching me. He's told me I have to win my shirt. This is the only way that I know how. Like, you know, there's a bad decision-making model that's probably led to that. We just have to understand why you've done it and what we can do to maybe help you do it a little bit better next time. I think that's probably the best way to phrase what I've learned.
Is there a way for teams to like weaponize the bench a lot better than they might be doing in the present day already? Like, I wouldn't say it's out of necessity, but it does feel like some teams do it out of necessity. Like, is there a way they could weaponize their bench? I guess I'm looking for more tactically, if that makes sense.
Massively, yeah, massively, mate. So you think about how Arsenal have used set pieces this season. You know, I don't know why it's like got on their backs at times about it. They turned it into an absolute weapon for them. Like, people fear coming up against them. Well, like, why can't we do that with subs? So, you know, maybe teams do it with Bournemouth. I haven't worked in the Prem this season, but like maybe teams are coming up against Bournemouth and going, they're insane when they bring players on in post 70 minutes. We have to be ready for that. And I think there is so much you can do around the tactical side of the game. And it lends into that opposition side of things again, where you're trying to predict what they look like in the last 20 minutes of games. Because if you can predict that, then you can sort of solve it, or you can combat it and you can work it. And we got this really nice moment where we're trying to like technically code. So, you know, it sort of players hit the physical red zone where they're in danger of an injury, you know,
Wenger used to love that phrase.
They're becoming useless to the game, is what, you know what I mean? But effectively it means you might have to change them. So physical red zones, you bring them up. What we're trying to do is create technical red zones. So we're trying to predict when players are going to become unproductive in periods of games in maybe KPIs that we need. So, you know, ball carrying in the last 15 minutes of games is insane because the game gets so tired because the Premier League is so intense that if you can ball carry, you know, you massively bring value into the game, particularly against certain styles of teams. So all of a sudden now, like, we were thinking, well, his ball carrying drops at about 65. So we now need to have on the bench someone who's a brilliant ball carrier. Difference. Yeah, we need to train them at half time. We need to have showed them clips of maybe the areas that they can ball carry in against this opposition. And we need to recognize when to bring them on. Now, all of a sudden, we've just gone through the why we're bringing them on, the who we're bringing them on for, the where we're going to bring them on, the what we want them to do. And we've effectively we've just given this sub every piece of information that we need, that the game needs and that the team needs. And it's just really like, it's simplified the process, but it's adding such value. And I think there is so much more of that can go on. And like I said, move away from that. We're losing, chuck the 6'8" guy on and hope it just bounces
Lump
off.
it long, direct.
Yeah, we're winning, bring another defender on. Do you know what I mean? Like, go back for, like, let's move. They're good, don't get me wrong. There's time and places for those. But can we be a little bit more layered with it? Can we add layers to that for sure?
Oh, that's a good one. I got a difficult one for you then, yeah. Like, I'm trying to make sure I can phrase it properly. Who would you say has been like the best sub that you've seen recently or whatever? Like, I don't know how to phrase it. Like, is there a sub like you find yourself, I don't know, you could just be watching Match of the Day 5 times out of a month or 4 times out of a month, and you're like, yeah, he might not have necessarily scored, but yeah, you're always making a difference or whatever. Like, is there any of those examples?
Again, so absolutely. And again, it goes back to what you want from a sub. So we had a player when I was at Wimbledon called Luke McCormick. McCormick, and he got, I think he got 7 substitute goal contributions for us just in that season that I worked with him, and he only had, I think it was like 11 sub appearances, but bearing in mind that that's like 25 minutes to 20 minutes a piece, you know, like, you're thinking your goal return is insane, based on the minutes that you are playing as a sub. Now he started a lot as well, so it balanced out in his overall statistic. But we created a statistic that was like, goals per minute per sub appearance. Now all of a sudden that's now in the footballing world, and people are using that because no one's ever done it before. And little things like that, I think they're a brilliant winning sub. So Liverpool's a great example when they bring on Endo.
Tell me about it.
They bring on Endo at like 70, 75, 80 minutes, and he'll just kill the game. He'll go fullback to fullback. His ball retention is insane. His interceptions and his ability to stop a counter attack is insane. And that's all they need, because they're ahead at that time. Their second half form is so good that they're pretty much ahead every second half. So they just need him to come in, just kill the game. And that's a brilliant winning sub. Luke McCormick is a brilliant losing sub. Like Divock Origi is another good example. Quite a nice losing sub. Just really specialises in clutch moments. And there's so many different examples where you go like, he'd be a good winning sub, losing sub, drawing sub, a good home sub, a good away sub, good possession sub. There's so many sort of different examples you can drive, which I think is cool.
Where do you see like specialization around coaching then? Because like we've been talking about, I'm on the outside, but I see throw-in coaches, set piece coaches. There's probably many of others. Where do you see that going? Like, are we only going to delve as a footballing society more into that kind of thing? Like, for example, I think it's a hot take, but if it's not there already, but I genuinely think there'll be a manager on maybe like 30 years from now, there'll be a manager on a match day, but all week you've got someone that just works with the defensive unit, someone that just works with the goalies and the attackers, and maybe like a link man. So essentially 4 or 5 coaches. But what would be your thoughts?
No, mate, that's a great thought. It's a great question as well. I think there are numerous models that work. So I think it doesn't mean it has to be one model. It has to be one. You look at NFL, the most specialized.
Another great example.
That you could get. They almost have like a 1-to-1 ratio of coach to player, and that works for them. It's an insane sport. It's insane how good they are at generating, potential from athletes. But there are other sports that maybe have limited coaches, but maybe a little bit of a different sport. I think football has space for specialism because, as you can see, set pieces is proving that it's getting better because we're having specialized set pieces. Subs, I'd like to think every club I've been into has shown a progression in, what's happening. Throw-ins, Thomas Gronemark's done some serious work with Liverpool.
Yeah.
Me at Land. So again, you're showing that it does work. I just think what you have to be careful of is not appointing a specialist coach when you maybe haven't got the basics. I saw a really good, it was a really good conversation on LinkedIn the other day, and it was like specialist coaches have a place, but if you're missing the fundamentals, the specialists are almost complementing nothing. You need to have like the base, the foundation first.
The nuts and the bolts.
Yeah, and then the specialization comes and fills in the gaps and adds the little 1%, because I don't think specialization will ever be more than maybe a 10%, but the foundation is like the 50, 60% that you have to get right. But I'm a big fan of specialization. I think people get caught up on names a lot. It's like, oh, well, you need a throwing coach. But, I know coaches that are just first team coaches, but will just specialize in set pieces, but no one will know him as a set piece coach like Bournemouth, because he's not called himself a set piece coach. He's just called himself a first team coach, and he'll help out around the training ground where he can. But when it comes to a Friday, he'll just do a little bit with the set pieces. Like I could see myself transitioning maybe in the future into a position where you go, I'm a first team coach, I'm just going to specialize in subs. So
now you're a manager, man. From this conversation, you're a manager, man, or a first team coach, essentially. Now you're a manager, man.
But I also think you touched on it brilliantly there, like at the end, where you said like it could get to a place where the manager, and Jurgen Klopp's brilliant at this, is just like an incredible delegator, and will just bring in all the right people and make all the right decisions when it comes to him, and that's what his role is, and he'll understand football and training and stuff like this. But he'll have a brilliant coach, he'll have a brilliant sports scientist, he'll have a brilliant data team, and you just then pick and, you know what I mean? You just maneuver.
Yeah, just nitpick and we'll go with this, we'll go with that. What do you think about this? Yeah, that's why I asked that, because I think that's where football's going, if it isn't there already. Yeah,
no, I completely agree, mate. And I think that person that has to do that will just become a brilliant man manager who
exactly,
or a brilliant tactician who's got a brilliant man manager as a 2. Or they'll complement it, but they'll just work it. I think I could see that going, but football's a beautiful sport, so who knows where it will end up.
Like you said, it's a beautiful sport, and this has been a beautiful conversation. My last question for you, Sammy, what do you think is the biggest misconception about substitutions in football today? Because you must hear some outdated thoughts sometimes.
That it has to be a shit role.
Yeah,
I think
yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that.
I can see why people think that, and we've come through an era where it's like if like Sunday League, if you're a sub, you're effectively a linesman, and that is a bit shit. I do get that. Like there are parts
What
of
an
it that you're
example,
never
yeah.
going to change. You know, I can't go down to Range Rovers at step 5 and go and because you're going to need a linesman. But like in those upper tiers where you start getting a little bit more sort of scope with it and privilege, is that being a sub can be a tool, it can be a weapon, it can be an identity, it can be a selling point.
How you do it.
I've helped teams recruit good subs. So we're signing a player because you've been a good sub. You're the whole reason we're signing you is supposedly because you're good at the role that you don't like. But that's why you're coming to this, brand new team with brand new contract, and you know what I mean. So I think there is so much opportunity around being a sub, and I think the biggest way to do it is that I think you can add value through being a sub. I think, or a finisher, energizer. I think you just have to create that modernization of the role. I think it needs. I don't think that's what I'm doing. Is it's going through that modernization. I think in 10 years' time, similar to set pieces, we'll look at subs and we'll go, look where subs are now, like compared to where they were 15 years ago.
You just made me think, Sammy, based on you saying that, is like I look at football. As you know, football, the fixture list for club and country is getting bigger and bigger. Where the Premier League is concerned, other leagues, I guess, as well, but where the Premier League is concerned, you're allowed 5 subs, bigger subs. A lot of academy boys are on the bench, whether they play or not. Then you just made me think, what if like clubs, rather than, because you mentioned bringing in guys because they're good subs, what if clubs or academies trained guys who are essentially going to be subs kind of thing? It's interesting where the game's going.
I went into Swindon 4 or 5 months ago now, but we literally delivered a workshop on how to become a good sub. So wow. They're under 18s. Yeah, they're under 18s. When I spent the day with them, and we went through different ways that they could prepare themselves, different ways that they can reframe, different ways that they can understand the role, different ways that they can, help. So how do they become a good winning sub? How do they become a bad losing sub? How do all these different questions? And all of a sudden now when I leave, we did it on this piece of paper. They've now got a piece of paper that's going to tell them how to be every sort of substitute that they need to be, how to prepare themselves, what they can reframe it, how, all these different things. You just think, wow, that might be with you for 15 years and you might develop that, but you're going to be a sub. Lionel Messi's been a sub 140 times in his career. If one of the best players on earth has done it that much, with all due respect,
you got to be a bit humble.
Yeah, it's going to happen. You just got to be ready for it. So you may as well make it work rather than sort of like resent it and like, push against it.
And be ego-driven.
Look at Solskjaer, look at Origi, look at Defoe. Like, they didn't make careers off it because they were brilliant players. But, they became known for moments where they come off the bench and would deliver. Like, why can't you be the next Defoe? Why can't you be the next Solskjaer? Like,
they've all had good careers, as you said.
Yeah.
It's interesting, man. Sammy, I've actually learned a lot, man. I'm definitely going to pick your brains a bit more before I let you get out of here. Yeah, let people know where they can find you as well, man. It's socials, all that stuff, as well as your book.
Yeah, mate. Yeah. So I've conveniently got one copy left, actually. It's selling quite nicely. But I've got a book out at the moment. It's called Finishers. So obviously a really nice terminology. And it's effectively how to create your own super sub. At any level of football, there's something you can do at every level. And it details my journey, how I created it, how I delivered it, how I implemented it, and how I'm developing it. And a little bit about my new innovations that I'm doing around referees at the moment and that sort of thing. So, it's on Amazon at the moment if you want to go and get it. But I'm typically on LinkedIn. I'm not too big on the socials. LinkedIn and Twitter a little bit. I do a little bit on. But just Sammy Lander. Google it, find it, and ask me a question. Let's start a football conversation.
Like he said, Ask Football Conversations. People, by the time you lot are finished watching this, everything that he's just said will be in the description, including the book. I don't know if you're going to be lucky enough to be the last person, but you've got to be in it to win it, man. Sammy, I judge my life on what I can learn from people. And, I've learned a wealth of information. As I said, I'm definitely going to be picking your brains, man. First things first, on behalf of myself and obviously the channel, appreciative to this, man. As I told you when we started setting this up, man, I'm all about sharing light on stories like this and sharing our love for the game, man. I'm a bit of a football nerd. Like, I've never done what you've done, but I really like it. It gets my blood pumping, man. So, yeah, man, I'm going to let you enjoy your evening. Thank you for that, Sammy, man.
No, thank you, mate. Like a big fan of the channel, big fan of what you do, big fan of how you've run it. Like, mate, I'm so appreciative of the opportunity. So, I'd love to stay in touch.
Definitely stay in touch. And people, we want to know your thoughts. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And on that note, God bless everyone. Peace.